President Trump is declassifying things at a rapid rate. One of the things that he declassified was Crossfire Hurricane. He's also got the CIA going all over the world to make sure that the US dollar is going to be strong. And Rasmussen has a new report out showing that Democrats in Washington, D.C. are willing to betray him. I want to go through all of this and more with my special guest, J. Michael Waller. Michael, thank you so much for joining me again.
It's nice to be back with you.
So some background. Michael is a senior analyst for strategy at the Center for Security Policy, former CIA asset. He's been published in the New York Post, Washington Examiner, the Federalist, the Wall Street Journal. He's also the author of Big Intel. I saw this new poll that's out. Let me bring this up. This was kind of shocking. This is Tyler O'Neill over at The Signal. I've had him on the show. And he's covering some data that the Rasmussen group put out. Basically, they looked at people that donate to Republicans, donate to Kamala Harris, and they asked them some questions. And as they start digging into the data, they start realizing, wait a minute, 75% of DC bureaucrats who voted for Kamala Harris said that given the choice of doing what Trump orders or what they believe is best, they will betray President Trump and do what they think is best. What are your thoughts on that? Is this part of draining the Washington, D.C. swamp?
Yeah, this is exactly the deep state. Here you have them admitting right out, they view themselves as a state within a state. They will do what they wish to do, regardless of what a constitutionally elected president would have them do. And the president is the one who the Constitution says is the only person who the Constitution says is in charge of the executive branch.
Wow. So so we have these DC employees that say that they are willing to do what they think is best versus what the president of the United States says. We have these federal judges that say that they have more authority than a sitting president. And we have these district judges that say that they're more powerful. How do we get a handle on this? Is it lawsuits allowing things to go through the court? Is it the idea that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy said we got to just start firing a bunch of people? How do we get the swamp drained?
Well, it's a combination. First, our legal system's a joke. It's been so perverted. It's just a political theater, and it's a way of abusing the system, weaponizing the system, and then making a lot of lawyers rich, and then running the clock of a presidency to make sure that policies can't get implemented. What President Trump has as constitutionally as president, and what the Congress has, is the right and the sole right to abolish these courts. Now, the judges are appointed for life, so they can't be fired, but their courts can be abolished. It's happened in the past. You abolish certain types of courts. Congress and the president then create other courts. The courts don't create themselves. So simply abolish those courts. Leave the judges as judges because they can't be fired, but they're not going to want to be on a judge's salary for the rest of their lives, most of them. They'll go on, and even if they stay, good. That's the price of getting rid of those courts. Create new courts and then appoint new judges to sit in those courts.
Okay. A lot of people have been disappointed in the Supreme Court. It seems like they are leaning against the president, or it doesn't seem like the conservative justices are acting very conservative, especially when it comes to authority to get rid of, for example, USAID, some of these other groups. Now you have these lower courts saying that the president of the United States illegally fired these people. They must be brought back. Their salaries must be reinstated. As we dig in on the USAID, I personally would like to see some names and some specific numbers linking members of Congress to these. But according to Elon Musk and DOJ, many of these were just fake, or they were used maybe by foreign actors to look like they had a domestic role. They even took advantage of churches like the Lutheran Church, the Catholic Church, used their charitable stance with large amounts of money to flood the country with illegal immigrants. Do you think that Trump is going to be able to keep USAID and similar groups at bay, or is that money just going to keep flooding towards groups that want to demolish the United States of America?
Well, the ones who want to demolish us will do whatever they can, but the end of the fiscal year is only 6 months away, 5 months away. So that means the money runs out. And that means Congress has to appropriate, the president has to ask for, and Congress has to appropriate and then authorize new money for USAID. So if Congress doesn't do that, there's no more money. And if the president vetoes it, there's no more money. So they're gone in 5 months regardless. So let them put up their fights. The thing is, the game has completely changed. What we need to do now is, and this is a time-consuming thing, and it gets back to your question about the courts because it involves prosecutions, criminal investigations and prosecutions, to put a lot of people in prison for the massive fraud they committed with USAID contracts. And then also to conduct national security investigations because we know how the Russians, the Chinese, the jihadists, and the Cuban intelligence service, which is a first-rate intelligence service, how they have infiltrated and exploited our aid community for decades, and how nothing was done about it. That national security issue hasn't even been raised yet. So there's a whole lot of runway left to really beat this thing into the ground. But I must say, we do need some type of foreign aid system for our international competition because the other countries are doing it against us. And the whole reason USAID was founded in the first place under President Kennedy was to combat what Kennedy openly said was communist subversion. That should be a main tool that we have. Quite apart from the CIA, quite apart from the military and everything else. It's just one more tool in the president's war chest to combat enemy subversion without getting American lives on the line. So, but the problem is USAID itself absorbed communist subversion. It then financed communist subversion, which means it should have been shut down.
Yeah, that's what I kept thinking was like, okay, this tool that was used to influence communism and foreign nations kind of turned on itself and became the very slush fund necessary to bring communism to the shores of the United States of America. Michael, you brought up a really great point. They may get some of this reinstated, but in 5 or 6 months, Republican-controlled House and Senate, they're going to have to decide with the president where money gets appropriated. Do you think that this always started out with ill intention, or do you think over time, as so much money and layers just kept building, that no member of Congress was even looking into where this money was going?
Yeah. Well, it started out with good intention. It was started by President Kennedy. It had full bipartisan support through the hardest years of the Cold War. And no one can possibly like everything they did, but by and large, it served the national interest up until about the time of the Soviet collapse. Then it started looking for a new role. If you don't have Soviet subversion anymore, what do? And well, here come what? These graduates from the colleges from the 60s and 70s, these people who wouldn't serve in the military, these people who hated America, who still had this do-gooder intention, and they came in as their form of public service was to help the poor abroad. That's all nice. That you don't have to hate America to do that. Even you could be a perfect patriot to do that. There's plenty of it. But a lot of them used it as a form of reparations. We're a bad country. We're an evil country. We're an evil people. We're going to use the taxpayer money to promote a type of reparations, revolutionary change in these countries that were previously backed by the United States and transform them the same way Obama wanted to transform America. And that's when you had this do-gooder / revolutionary mentality taking over much of USAID. Not the whole thing, by the way. There's a lot of really great, solid people in there who did have American interests first. But then it became a racket. So if you look at how USA, its budget was 3 times the official budget of the CIA. This is a huge budget that USAID had. There was never, since USAID was founded in 1961, there was never a congressional oversight investigation of that agency. So if you have a system like this that has no oversight, that's funded blindly for generations, and acts as a self-feeder mechanism where it recruits its own people, and then after you've put in your 20 years service as a government official, you can retire with a pension, and then you can become what? A USAID contractor.
Mm.
So you retire, and if you're in a management position, you retire and you pretty much promote who's going to be your successor. Then you join or even set up a contracting company of your own to go back to your friends in the system and to people who owe their jobs to you, and then to start getting lucrative contracts. Now, some of these contracts will be of value to the American interests. If it's a humanitarian thing among a neighboring country or something that people need help, or if it's something that most Americans can agree on and what Congress had authorized, that's all fine. Clean water for the poor in these countries, and also to fight subversion of the Chinese or the jihadist or the Russian or whatever other type of stripe. That's all fine. But when they get starting to promote programs for the sake of having programs, programs that actually do little to help the intended people and do little to promote the American national interests, but do a lot to fatten the contractors and to incentivize people inside the system whose career goal is to retire with a pension and then make money as contractors. And you're going to make millions and millions and millions of dollars in this. If the profit margin, acceptable profit margin, is 10 to 15% in a government contract, and you have a $10 million contract, which is considered small, your profit is 1.5 million a year. And that's on top of the salary that you pay yourself, which is capped at about $660,000. So that's over 2 million a year. And then you hire your spouse, and then you have spin-off companies, and you keep getting bigger and bigger contracts. Within a few years, you're a multimillionaire.
Wow. Okay. Nobody's laid it out to me that simple. Thank you for doing that. So it's kind of like, um, I don't want this to come across as talking about another race or culture, but it's pretty well known that within like the Indian culture and Asian cultures, you take care of your children, they take care of you in your older years, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what I hear here is like, I'll take care of you, I'll get you the dream job, but when I leave the government, you now take care of me through USAID and government contracts, and that's where I make my big payoff. Isn't from serving the country, but now the post service of the country. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, but really it's human nature. Think the English colonists here did that. The great waves of Irish immigrants came here and did that. The Italian immigrants, the Jewish immigrants, the Polish immigrants, they all did the same thing. They're all looking after one another because that's all they have. That's their whole community. And it's even in a bureaucracy where it's no longer now a cultural or ethnic issue. It's a career issue. Everybody you know is USAID. And this is not to knock the USAID people completely, because a lot of them really did serve our interests. They did some heroic work in every war that we fought in since the agency was first started. They've done a terrific job. I've worked with USAID even as a subcontractor on a couple of occasions in Central America with the Contras, and then in Russia on a rule of law project immediately after the Soviet collapse. And that's when I first realized it was a racket, because on this rule of law to help this sort of Wild West anarchic post-Soviet system, you want to have some type of rule of law. And we were to go there to work with parliaments and others. And we found very quickly the State Department did not want USAID to do anything that would harm the old KGB. And if you said anything about it, you'd lose your contract. which is what happened to me. But I knew I was going to lose my contract, which made me say it all the louder because I saw the corruption in there and how we were actually funding a post-Soviet system that would ultimately restore the Soviet KGB. And boom, a few years later, who takes power?
Wow. Interesting. Okay. Let me ask you this. I don't know if you know this, but if not, just give me your best guess. But I keep wondering, okay, the Trump administration, he's sworn in. They want to come right out of the gate hitting home runs. They come out with over 100 executive orders. They're hitting the ground. They're closing the border. They're getting the illegals rounded up. Like, people are like, oh my gosh, how does Trump get so much done? Does this man just live off of fish sandwiches and Diet Coke? He must have a dream team. But then we start seeing behind the curtain at USAID and some of these other programs and charities and organizations. Do you think that they were tipped off that USAID would be one of the better places for Doge to dig in and start looking around? Or do you think they just happened to hit a gold mine right out of the gate?
I think they hit a soft target right out of the gate that was a gusher. Although I do know that some people on the transition did tip off the president that they had a big problem with USAID, that it was funding the other side. It just nobody realized just how bad it was.
Okay. And as I dug in, I kept seeing, I know that there's connections to Republicans, but I kept seeing over and over again connections to Democrats, funding this, funding that. This would help with elections. This would help with, getting favor here. This would help with bringing illegals into the country. Do you think this makes it harder for the Democrat Party going forward, not having this slush fund of money?
This kills the Democrat Party moving forward, not having that slush fund. And here's why. USAID was the funds were illegally being used to influence our own political system through not just politics, but through culture, through media, and through funding foreign entities that were in turn influencing things in the United States. It was almost like USAID was being used to fund foreign governments and foreign entities to come back and influence us as some kind of covert operation. So it's going to kill them. But more than that, influence is something else. This was a way of bankrolling wealthy donors, well-funded media outlets, think tanks, private investigative groups, law firms. Law firms are making a fortune off of this. And a lot of the other parts of the swamp that not just influenced, but funded, and not just funded current policies, but were funding the education of the next generation of people to run the system and to train activists, to train protesters, to train journalists, to train lawyers. The whole gambit. This multi-billion-dollar slush fund was being used for all of these purposes. So if you look at the George Soroses of the world and these other big foundations, the Ford Foundation, the Tides Foundation, so many others, like they would do in the private sector on their investments, they were leveraging their philanthropy so that they might pay 12.5%, 25% of something. They'd pool that with someone else who would put in a similar percentage, and they would rely on these USAID and other taxpayer-funded initiatives to pay for the rest. That's what really gave these foundations and individuals so much power, was they knew how to leverage the USAID and other taxpayer system.
Yeah, a good example of that was shared on Joe Rogan by Elon Musk. He said George Soros would start an NGO with $1 million. He would then work his contacts, his Rolodex, and then next thing you knew, they would give him $1 billion to go do some kind of charitable good in the name of the American taxpayer. And then that money was used to fund DAs that don't believe in the law, bring illegal immigrants up through Central and South America, over across the border, pretending to do good, but with evil intentions. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, putting people through law school, making sure they get appointed as assistant DAs and then DAs, or appoint the DAs who then appoint the younger people as assistant DAs, to groom them and to cultivate them and to place them through the system. And they gave themselves a bit of cover. They would bring in a lot of the moderate sort of rhino type Republicans to show how bipartisan they were. These were the John McCains of the world, people like that, and they're loyalists. And then you have a bipartisan uniparty consensus, because that group of the center, or roughly center right element, depended on this machinery as well.
Wow.
It was great to watch the day that the Trump administration shut down the doors of USAID. You had all those senators and members of Congress out in front of USAID protesting. But if you look at them, most of them were representing the Beltway bandits, the big contractors. So you had Senator Van Hollen from Maryland, Congressman Raskin from Maryland. Well, in Raskin's district is full of multi-billion-dollar USAID contractors. One or two of the senators from Virginia and the congressman from Northern Virginia, all homes to these Beltway bandits. So they were whining about, oh, the poor are going to suffer and all of that. No, they were whining that their wealthy constituents were going to suffer. And these constituents are campaign donors, and they fund all these larger campaigns that push these agendas that these lawmakers want. That's what they were crying about. And if you look at now the congressional committees that fund USAID, who was chairman of the Senate subcommittee for this until last year? Senator Van Hollen. So he was the one putting the money forward and authorizing it to go to his friends in his state to fund his agenda.
This is the same guy that just flew on taxpayer money to El Salvador, right? To check on a former gang member that he didn't know where he was. Tom Homan says he knew exactly where he was. That's why he knew to fly to El Salvador, you liar. So, yeah. I mean, so you've got Raskin that just absolutely hates Donald Trump, Von Hollen that absolutely hates Donald Trump. But again, like you said, they were down there saying, children are going to starve. Children will starve if you shut this down. But really, it was their political donors saying, if you lose this money, I will not contribute to getting you reelected, right? Don't you think that's what was happening?
Oh, yeah, but it was even more than that, because the money is limited, because, candidates can only take in so much money. It's the super PACs that take a lot of the money. But it's also the issues that are being put forward. So if you have armies of cadres to fund protests, to have get out the vote efforts and voter registration efforts and other things that are biased in favor of you, it's a gigantic political machine that's more than simply the campaign dollars. It's your very constituents. So imagine you're Jamie Raskin, the congressman who represents much of Montgomery County, Maryland, where many of these big USAID firms are. Your constituents are going to be losing, they did lose billions of dollars overnight. Now, those constituents, and I know a lot of these types of people, I know some of them personally, I know their neighborhoods. They live in multi-million-dollar homes. They are leveraged out because they can always be assured of this income. So they have multiple vacation homes. They live lavishly. Some of them are custodians of their money, and they'll be okay financially, but a lot of them are so far leveraged out that their homes are up for sale. Their livelihoods have collapsed because they never saved for that rainy day, because for them, there was never going to be a rainy day.
Wow. It's, I'm here in Utah. I don't follow politics that much. I don't have the only reason I do this podcast is I don't like the government. But I know the government does a lot of good. I know there's a lot of good people within the government. But when this story started breaking, I mean, like, my jaw was just on the ground every day. Like, I cannot believe the stuff that they were using our money for. It was just so shocking to me. But like, I've never been to Maryland. I've never been to Washington, D.C. Like, I don't even, like, my brain can't conceptualize. You've lived through this. You've rubbed shoulders with these people. you understand the closest I got to it was like, okay, wait a minute. If they shut off the Mexican cartel and now they don't have billions of dollars, they're going to fight back. I didn't realize that there's people in Maryland and Virginia and DC. They're in the same boat. You're cutting off billions of dollars to us. We're going to fight back.
Yeah. Yeah. Go to Zillow right now and look up Chevy Chase, Maryland, which is where a lot of these areas are built. You'll see homes for sale, $3 million, $5 million, $23 million. Now, the Washington, D.C. economy and the Washington suburb economy, their only business is the federal government. All the banks, all the stores, all the restaurants, everything else depends on the federal government. So it's not like there's some mining interest or some energy or some manufacturing or high tech. It's just that. In fact, the high tech industry around the Washington, D.C. area is a federal contracting high tech industry. So everything depends on the swamp. So a guy like Trump comes in and says, we're going to drain the swamp. They're going to fight back as tough as the cartels fight back.
Wow. They call it the Rust Belt because, a lot of metal, cars and mining and all that, and it's rusted out and the jobs aren't the same and the company's closed up, the factories closed down. DC could be the next Rust Belt because of Trump, where, there's always going to be government money that goes out, but maybe it's not at the same level it was before. It'll be really interesting to see down the road what happens. But I do remember seeing that, where all of a sudden it was like within a couple of weeks, property values in DC had dropped on average like $160,000, and people were panicked and selling, and they were just so used to living off of the fat of the government. But were they really even doing anything? I mean, Elon Musk couldn't even get people to reply with 5 things they had done for the week to prove that they existed as a federal employee.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, a lot of them do important work, but you don't need that many people to do that work, especially with technology now. You don't need it. So most of the jobs, and look, most of the people, not to dump on the people, most of them are good people. You won't vote for the same candidates, but they're good people. But it doesn't mean that the rest of us should be employing them, especially if they're not producing anything of value.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have employees, like I tell them all the time, do not take this personal, but you're here for 2 reasons. One, your position makes more money than I pay you, and that contributes to the whole company. Or you take so much pressure off my plate, it's worth the money that I'm paying you, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are not doing much, it's a lot of water cooler hanging out and gossiping and all, like, let's get in, let's get the work done, let's keep the country moving. But I think we're going to find out there's a lot of duplicate work, or maybe they need to upgrade the software. I've seen some of the people that Trump has brought in, and they're like, man, some of this software is from the 70s, the 80s. Like, for example, I didn't realize this, for a government employee to retire, they've literally got to go down like a salt mine, get on a bike, ride to wherever your name is in the alphabet, find a physical file, ride their bike back through this cool mine, and then head back up. I mean, it's like so antiquated. It's insane.
And you can't expand the operations because everything is in a mine. So the elevator to get down into the mine, if it only takes 2 or 3 people at once, there's only a certain amount of people who can come up and down, let alone all the equipment and everything else. And it's not just that way with that was the federal retirement system you were talking about, but the IRS, Medicare, any other government program is going to have similar problems. That's one reason why that government services are so poorly run compared to the private sector. It's just because they're so inefficient, and they have far more people who than they need to do the job.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, you can't put all of this on Biden or Trump or I mean, if they're using software since Jimmy Carter, the software is just old. It's antiquated. They need to spend the money to upgrade that. Let me ask you this.
I mean, they have software from companies that don't even exist anymore.
Oh, really? Wow.
And it's like, it's not that somebody else bought out those companies. The companies just simply went obsolete, had no value, and ceased to exist. So now you have IT guys just maintaining that software from the now non-existent companies.
Oh man, that's interesting because like I'm not like a software expert or anything, so I'm just going to use things that may be like outdated, right? But like, let's say that you've got somebody fresh out of college, or they're coming from the corporate America, and they're used to like SQL databases and Ruby on Rails and JavaScript and all this, and now they're like, hey, actually, in order to keep America running, we've got to train you on this DOS network from the 80s. We've got to go back in time in a DeLorean and teach you how to use 1980 software. And meanwhile, their skills are getting worse because they're not keeping up with how fast high tech is moving. There's at some point they're going to have to start replacing these systems, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, imagine having a DOS systems now that first they're slow. They don't have the capacity to interface with more modern systems. You have small countries that have much more sophisticated technology in their government systems than the federal government has. Apart from, say, the intelligence community and the Defense Department. And then you have entire departments that have different computer systems that can't even talk to one another. Now, this, again, you brought up before, this isn't just the fault of the Democrats. This is the fault of every last politician who voted for a continuing resolution to fund this. Every last lawmaker who had a responsibility for oversight and never exercised it. You had some lawmakers warning of this over the decades, and they warned about it and they warned about it. And then people said, they stopped listening. They said, this guy's crazy. It can't be that bad. No one is speaking up about it. But they were right. And they weren't just Republicans, and they weren't just conservatives.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, we talked about USAID, how that's hurting the Democrat Party. There's now this big new investigation going into Act Blue. The Democrats are being accused of creating a money laundering machine, and Kamala Harris immediately put out this email to her people saying, over the last few months, Republicans have escalated their attacks on an unlikely target, Act Blue, the platform Kamala Harris and many Democrats use to receive campaign contributions. In the next hour or so, Donald Trump himself is expected to sign a presidential memorandum asking his attorney general to perform some kind of investigation into Act Blue. Let's be clear on what this is about. Donald Trump wants to make it harder for people like you to contribute to Democrat candidates, so it's easier for billionaires like Elon Musk to buy elections. What's your reaction to that?
Oh, there are a few. First, they take the old Marxist class struggle line of the working class people against the wealthy few. As she's sending that out from whatever mansion she's living in. So you get that first. Second thing, Act Blue was breaking federal election laws and other laws, and flagrantly doing so. So when they're faking people's donations. And this is, we've seen all this documented by people who said, I never gave anything to Act Blue. And it's so people's IDs are being stolen for the purpose of committing election finance fraud. And here's Kamala Harris, the former prosecutor, who doesn't want to even have an investigation of it because it's their piggy bank. So what the Trump administration is doing is not even being political about it. It's just saying, we're going to enforce the law. We're going to fight corruption. And I haven't heard one Democrat at the national level say anything about the need to fight corruption in government and how DOJ and these investigations might be a good thing because our country is spending itself to death. It's all about their pockets and about their cronies and their political machines and pushing their agenda. That's really all they care about.
But isn't this email kind of the digital version of the people from Maryland down at USAID. Like, they're going to block you from making your donations to a
Yeah.
Democrat candidate
Yeah.
so that Elon Musk can buy election. What about George Soros?
Right.
Like,
Right.
what about all of the Silicon Valley people? What about Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg?
Right.
Mark Zuckerberg put $400 million into getting Joe Biden elected.
Stephen, you're not supposed to be asking these kinds of questions. There's just something terrible about it, right? We're supposed to just accept what are told and accept the censorship that they imposed on us before and stop protesting and just be good citizens and shut up. That's what they want us to do. So look, this is how, if you look in hindsight now, we saw from COVID, not just which politicians, but which of our neighbors wanted to censor us. We saw which politicians and which of our own neighbors, people we know, thought that we should go to jail if we disagreed with what the government wanted to inject into us. You had a sizable proportion of the population even say they wanted to round us up and put us in camps. And it sounded crazy at the time when certain people were warning about this. But look at it in retrospect, it's real. So, what Trump has done and what Elon Musk has done and the whole DOJ team has done at great personal cost to themselves is to rip out this illegal funding mechanism that all of us were paying for. And so you have this just panic on the left. Their whole business model has been demolished.
Meanwhile, they say, they could take back the House in 2026. I mean, I keep thinking, if there isn't this cheating and there isn't all these billions of dollars, how did Democrats ever win again? But they'll come up with some new scheme.
Well, it's something we have to be careful about because if you look at what's happened to the stock market and people's investments, whether you're just starting out or whether you're near or at retirement, and you've taken a big, big hit, especially if you've been in the tech sector. You know, even Trump supporters say, well, I understand why this is being done and it'll bounce back. A lot of other people are going to say, wait a minute, I was depending on that for my retirement. My mother was depending on that. Someone is depending on that. And they'll get to saying, if you don't fix this fast, Donald Trump, we're not going to support you. So I can see where certain radical policies that the president must take in order to prevent us from going over the economic cliff. He has to take it, but he also has to find a solution, not just by the 2026 election, but by the end of this year, because all of 2026, it's going to be campaign year. Congress is going to not do anything super controversial. The House can't afford to with Johnson's super slim majority, and a lot of that majority is rhinos who are going to be losing a lot when their pieces of fat are cut out of government. So it has to be done now. It has to be done this year, and it's going to be a terrible task because if we lose the House next year, Trump is going to be impeached every day for the rest of his presidency, and none of his agenda will be funded.
Yeah, didn't you tell me that they had like a dozen lawsuits lined up, ready to go, or something like that? That they were already starting to line. Are those still in the back, ready to come forward, or are they looking for new ways to get him?
Yeah, well, they're always looking for new ways. But yeah, last time we talked, they had over 100 lawsuits that they spoke about already in the hopper. We're seeing those lawsuits now. So all these district judges are judging on those pre-written lawsuits. Some of them were written, last summer. So they had planned this. They'd planned which judges to shop this to, but also the Trump team had anticipated these lawsuits. So that when they planned the executive orders and these other actions, they thought we have to push a lot out really fast to, yes, get the job done quickly, but to get the lawsuits over with so they can be heard at the appellate level and finally at the Supreme Court level and have the Supreme Court decide. So they were expecting this. A lot of those, despite our disappointments in certain recent Supreme Court decisions, Trump has had mostly wins in the Supreme Court. You can't win all the time in the Supreme Court. Nobody can. So the administration was anticipating this, unlike last time around when they went in pretty blind and they didn't even have the executive orders written. The key now, though, is to get a lot of those executive orders enacted as law so that a future president cannot repeal or revoke the executive orders.
I love having you on. You bring up so many good points. I want to go back to the economy, right? They always say it's the economy, stupid, right? So they've got to figure out the Wall Street aspect of this, because there are people that will lose patience, right? Like I see on the internet all the time. Did you want the border closed? I voted for this. Do you want illegal immigrants out? I voted for this. Do you want the criminals out? I voted for this. Do you want the war to end? I voted for this. The stock market lost you a bunch of money. I didn't vote for that one.
Yeah.
Right. So,
yeah.
and you can say, well, the stock market is not the economy, but if it's my retirement, it's my economy. And so my economy matters a lot to me. And so I do believe they're trying to work through all this tariff stuff pretty quickly. And I do believe the market will bounce back just historically, but the emotion behind money can get people to vote the opposite of what is good for them, because they think, well, maybe the other thing will be better for me in the long run. Your thoughts on that?
Most Americans don't think long term. We want satisfaction. Those who do think long term are the ones who invest and who have something at stake. A lot of people, though, who had saved up for their retirement and they were planning on retiring and can't now, some of them are going to say, well, you know what? This is part of the price of leaving something better for the next generation. Some are going to say, I didn't vote for this. And some might simply not vote for the Democrats, but they're not going to vote at all. So you might get a bad turnout. That's why things have to be swung around really, really fast. But as you said, the market is not the economy, but it is a factor of the voting, because people vote really the market, not the economy. Imagine, though, these tariffs are not simply economics. These tariffs are also aimed at our adversaries like China. China is such an existential threat to our country, especially over the long term. And it's so huge. And they have a real coherent, controlled strategy. Let's look at the way they're taking over the Caribbean right now, next to the Gulf of America, the entry point and the exit point. They're taking it over. Successive administrations have allowed this to happen. Trump is just gearing up to challenge that. But if Trump doesn't go after China right now, which is financially leveraged out, it's vastly overextended itself. It doesn't have a domestic market economy. It has an export economy. So he's saying, let's really hit their export economy hard by raising tariffs and cause a lot of those leveraged out instruments to collapse, or entities to collapse. You start infighting within the Chinese Communist leadership about all the money that's being lost, because it's not Communist Party money. It's private money by the gangsters who run the Communist Party, but they're all in factions. So it's in our long-term interest to help China collapse economically the way Reagan helped the Soviet Union collapse economically. And then you don't have a war. And it's great for the future generations. So that's another aspect to what Trump is doing with the tariffs. And he can't just come out and explain that, because once he admits that, even though the Chinese know it, Trump's not saying it. So they can't use it as a casus belli for initiating hostilities against us.
You know this, the viewers might not know this, but let me put this up on the screen. There are massive cities in China that are completely empty. Like there's an entire city that looks like Paris, France, that is empty. Like millions of people could live in this city. There's even an Eiffel Tower. It's a fake Paris in China. It's completely empty. There's entire neighborhoods the size of major cities in America that are completely empty. There's entire cities in China that are completely empty. They've just been building all of this real estate in order to prop up their dollar and make their GDP look really good to the world. It's all what do they call that? Tempimkin village or something like that. It's empty. It's fake. When I saw that, there's a like millions of people could live in this Chinese Paris, and it's all fake. There's not a soul that lives in the city.
Yeah. They have tens of millions of brand new empty housing units that they can't sell and they can't lease out because there aren't people to live in them. Their one-child policy has created a situation where the parents who own their apartment are going to give it to their one child. There's no need for that one child to go someplace else. Or when the parents pass away, there's nobody to buy that parent's apartment or nobody who would want to inherit it because that one child has gone someplace else. So this is part of the collapse of the Chinese economy, where imagine building housing for Los Angeles, New York, Houston, and a few other big cities with nobody to buy or rent them. So whose money is that? Whose loans are that? How can those loans be repaid? How can that be sustained? And it can't. And this is where Trump's sanctions are so important on China, is to start kicking it in the knees and make it fall down on its own.
Yeah, it's all fake. I guess that's maybe why Scott Bessent, the head of the Treasury, he came out today. He told the IMF and the World Bank the United States is the strongest country in the world, and that the U.S. dollar will remain the global reserve currency. And he came out and he talked about how China and Brazil, like, they're doing all these things. They're trying to spread out, but their economy and their currency is so fake compared to America. Like, we may have our problems, but we don't have giant ghost cities where you could house 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 million people, and it's all fake. Like, we need real houses with a real economy, with real money, with real banks. It's all. This is why he's saying that the U.S. dollar is going to remain the world reserve currency. What are your thoughts on that?
This is really vital, and this is what our educational system doesn't teach us, and most of the media doesn't inform us about, that we are an economic powerhouse after the gold standard, right? So our money's not backed by anything except by the strength of our economy. Our deficit spending is simply the government printing more money and making the dollar worthless. So when other countries look at this, especially our adversaries, so the Marxists in Brazil, Putin in Russia, India, China, Communist China, and the Marxists in South Africa, that's BRICS, BRICS, their goal is to create a new currency to destroy the dollar and to replace it. This is why China's been cutting these deals with different oil-producing countries in the Middle East and elsewhere to undermine the petrodollar. Because right now, if you want to buy oil internationally, you have to pay in dollars. That's how it's denominated. So all these countries need the dollar in order to buy oil, among other goods. So if they're able to destroy the dollar, the petrodollar, they're really hurting us. If we stop becoming the world's reserve currency, we're really being hurt. So you have the Treasury Department right now under Trump has made, and the Commerce Department has made, ensuring the primacy of the dollar the top priority. Trump has also tasked the CIA and the rest of the intelligence community to do the same thing, to focus on undermining any efforts to harm the dollar and promoting things in other countries that will promote the dollar. This is what the CIA had been set up to do after World War II anyway. So when friends on our side say, destroy the CIA, we're destroying the dollar. It's one thing to get the woke people out and the lunatics out and the waste and the fat out. But when you take the CIA's resources and you channel them toward propping up the dollar, all Americans benefit.
Yeah, that's one thing. Like, there's a bad taste in people's mouth for the CIA, for the FBI, but the majority of the organization is good. They are working to keep the American empire functioning and the life that we all live, a very good life. I've lived in third world countries. We live so good in America. They're trying to prop that up. I love the moves that are being made right now that we don't even fully understand. But I think the Trump administration, he's using the CIA differently than I would say Obama or Biden did. Would you agree with that?
Sure. Yeah, Obama and Biden used the CIA to promote anti-Americanism around the world. Yeah, remember how they use it to overthrow the pro-US Arab countries in North Africa, to undermine Saudi Arabia, the guarantor of the petrodollar, to undermine the United Arab Emirates, a great ally of ours if we would only let them be, to promote jihadist movements around the world, to promote Marxism around the world, to promote cultural Marxism, to turn friendly traditional societies around the world against us by pushing DEI and all sorts of perversions on them, and by undermining parents and families and traditional societies the way ours had been undermined years ago. So we're used to it, but these other countries are not, turning our friends into adversaries and even enemies because they see us as a danger. So who comes in? Guys like Putin come in and say, look, we're here just to leave countries alone and have commercial relations and good security relations, and everybody has their own traditions. We're not going to push that on you. The Chinese saying, we just want to have commercial transactional relations with everybody. We're not going to push our ideology on you. It's a lie. They're doing it subtly. They're catching countries in debt traps, but they are both, Russians and the Chinese, are saying, you know, we're not going to push this kind of cultural revolution on you that the United States and Canada and Europe are all pushing. That's appealing to a lot of people who don't want that to happen. So, but neither Putin nor the Chinese Communist Party are allowing any of this wokeness in their country because they know it's a weapon.
Yeah, we've seen that right here on our own native soil. Okay, we've only got just a couple of minutes. I just have one last question for you. I read that President Trump is preparing to do his first international trip outside of the Pope and different things like that. But it looks like Saudi Arabia is one of the first stops. Do you think he is heading over to undo the damage of the Biden administration? In his first term, they welcomed him. They put on this big dinner, this dance. They let him touch the king's sword, which they never let anyone do. Then Biden comes, little baby fist bump. Like they did not like Biden, and now Trump is going back over. Is part of solidifying the strength of the petrodollar, solidifying America's relationship with Saudi Arabia?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Trump did this in 2017 when he was first president, too. One of his first foreign trips was to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is so powerful in that part of the world that imagine what Trump was able to do. He was able to work with the Saudis to help unite Arab countries, which are always fighting among themselves, and to cease its hostility toward Israel, and to even help Israel as Israel helped them. One of the dirty secrets is how Israel has helped the royal families of these other Arab countries to stay in power against the Muslim Brotherhood, the Palestinian version of which is called Hamas. So Obama and Biden supported the Muslim Brotherhood, helped the Muslim Brotherhood successfully overthrow some regimes and try to overthrow other regimes. So by Trump doing this, he's saying, no, wait, we have to get back together. So when Trump's speech in Saudi Arabia, when he first went over in 2017, was the drive them out speech. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about the sovereignty of countries, how we all have our differences, but we all have our sovereignty. And if we work together as sovereign countries, we can solve a lot of our problems without using military force or without even being hostile to one another. We can compete, but it would be friendly competition. It would not be enemy type of competition. And it worked with the Abraham Accords. Yeah, Biden tried to junk the Abraham Accords. So Trump is reviving it now. The Iranian regime is the main target of all the Arab almost all the Arab countries. Really, the only ally they have is Qatar, which people in the pay of Qatar in the United States are the only ones defending Qatar. But that's a jihadist, super wealthy regime that's funding the very people who kill us while hosting our military and CIA base on its soil, so everyone leaves it alone. So for Trump to make this move is really important, especially at this time. You need the president of the United States to be helping the Arabs in this crisis that's going on in and around Israel, and the Iran crisis, and now the Pakistan-India crisis, which is bringing in China into a conflict there. So it's perfect timing at a really tough time in history.
Yeah. All right. One thing I'll point out, and then we'll wrap up. When President Trump was running for president, he went to one of the big UFC fights, and the crowd went wild. There was all of the people that he was bringing in to this presidency: Elon Musk, RFK, they were all there. And who did he choose to sit by? The chairman of the board of Aramco, the biggest oil company in Saudi Arabia. I think he was already putting the chess pieces on the board to solidify this relationship. So I appreciate your insight on all of this. You've got a great book out, Big Intel. I want to put a link to that down below. You go through, you show the CIA, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to put a direct link to that. Tell me just quickly about that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Big Intel is about how the CIA went and the FBI went from Cold War heroes to deep state villains. So they went from having roles to defend our society from crime and foreign subversion under the FBI, and then the CIA after World War II to help us to inform our president of everything going on around the world, so we wouldn't be dependent on other countries to do it, and then to watch and even go after our adversaries without the use of military force. And the chief purpose was to fight Marxist subversion worldwide. So both of those agencies ended up under Obama and beyond embracing that very Marxism that they were supposed to be combating. And then that's how you get DEI and critical theory and all of this other stuff that's really polluted not just the political bias within our intelligence community, but destroyed the very integrity of intelligence collection and intelligence analysis and the type of information to be given to our national leadership to make decisions, and also, though, to promote this critical theory, this cultural Marxism on our whole population, and to go after people like you and me and so many of your viewers as well, to treat us as the enemy. So that's what the book is about. It's about how it got there, but it's a history lesson going from back to when J. Edgar Hoover first came in. What was his purpose? What kind of person was he like? What was he really fighting against? All the way up to the transformation of the FBI, similar with CIA. But then in the last two chapters offer blueprints as starts of discussion of what the future president, ultimately was Donald Trump, because the book came out a year ago, might do to fix this in a positive way and to keep those elements of our intelligence and counterintelligence and federal investigative services, keep what's needed for the country and get rid of the rest in a way that won't let the bad guys win.
Okay, great. I'm going to put those direct links down below. Thank you for taking time to come on. This has been a really fascinating conversation. Thank you again. I hope you have a